Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. What a week it's going to be. Democrats and Republicans head to the polls for primaries on Super Tuesday in 11 states in the United States to decide who they think should be president. So you can imagine the candidates hitting the campaign trail harder than before. This week, we're focused again on the race to the White House, America's most watched election. But here's what else is going on around the world. President Muhammadu Buhari was in Riyadh in Mecca this past week, where he said the federal government would welcome support from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in ongoing efforts to rehabilitate parts of the country affected by the Boko Haram insurgency. During a meeting with the organization's Secretary General, Iyad Badani, President Buhari urged the OIC to send a fact-finding mission to the ravaged states of Borno, Yobe and Adamawa to see the damage done by the terrorists. He challenged the OIC to act urgently in support of the restoration of peace, law and order to Libya, which he pointed out had been breeding terrorists who have been causing mayhem in Western Central African countries after the fall of the Gaddafi regime. Our security expert, Dr. Ekhomu, joins me now to discuss the president's recent request. Dr. Ekhomu, thanks for joining us on the program. What do you make of the president's request?
Well, the request to the OIC is a usual request for a country in the kind of situation we find ourselves, where conflict has devastated part of our country, and the president needs funds. Obviously, with the fall in oil revenues and other economic problems we're having, we're not able to mobilize the funds to do the rebuilding on our own. So the thing to do right now is either to organize a donors conference or in fact to go to a body like OIC and make that request, which he has made. But of course, usually with things like this, there are strings attached.
Now, some would think that making a request like this indicates Nigeria is a member of the OIC. Has the organization been involved in work of this nature?
Well, I think this particular request is unique in the sense that it's coming from a group that could be labeled to have secular religious inclination or religious intent. This demand is also smart at this time because the fact that the West is not interested in, well, I can't say not interested flatly. The fact that the West doesn't appear to be very interested in our problem with Boko Haramism because it's Nigeria means that we really need to look elsewhere to see where help can come. That is why you see this rapprochement with China, and I believe now with the Arab world, and perhaps it's going to go beyond that also. So I think the reality on ground is that making this kind of request will commit us in certain ways. Now, are we willing to pay the price? That's the question we need to ask ourselves.
Doctor, these insurgents are claiming to be Muslims who are fighting the cause of Islam. Can religious doctrine permeate through their thick, bloodthirsty ideas?
The answer is a definite no, because they could be, they say that they are practicing Muslims, but you see, these guys, they are fundamentalists, they are extremists. You call them insurgents, I call them terrorists, because that's really what they are. Their job is to put fear in populations. They are not interested in governance in the real sense of it. They just want to tear down civilization as we know it. We should be very careful with our rush to rebuild, because in my mind and from what I see, for example, this very past week, we were given some statistics by the Nigerian military that they just rescued almost 2,000 women and girls. And then they've killed almost 100 Boko Harams within the last 2 weeks. Where were these people held? So what I'm saying is there is still ongoing conflict. So we shouldn't be in such a hurry to send people out of IDP camps, to start building schools and hospitals and buildings. I think the focus right now is still on the military phase. We must pacify the areas, we must mop up the areas, we must remove HB IEDs and roadside IEDs. HB IEDs are homebound IEDs because some homes have been mined by these people, such that you go in there, they will detonate and kill people. We have landmines all over the place. These things must be cleared up such that the place is safe for habitation before you go and start living.
Thanks again for joining us, Dr. Ekhomu. Now to other news. The African Union has decided it will go ahead to send 100 human rights monitors and 100 military monitors to Burundi. This much was made known by South African President Jacob Zuma after he returned from the country over the weekend. Now, the last time the African Union had attempted such a move was weeks ago. The Burundian government had threatened to shoot at sight any peacekeepers as soon as they land. But President Zuma says things are now different.
We are pleased with the participation and contributions of all these sectors. The high-level delegation of the heads of state and government expressed its concerns about the levels of violence, loss of life, and the general state of political instability in the country. We are, however, pleased that all parties expressed strong commitment to resolving whatever political problems exist through inclusive and peaceful dialogue.
Now we're headed to the Middle East, where all sides agreeing to a ceasefire. Peace talks were supposed to begin on Syria, but that may have been jeopardized by reports of a ceasefire not being observed. The Syrian National Coalition blamed Russian and the Syrian government for not observing the truce. Vice President of the Turkey-based group, Nagam al-Gadri, said there were breaches by both the Syrian government and the Russians in Latakia countryside, as well as further attacks in the countryside around Aleppo, Hama and Damascus.
We were sure that Russia and the regime won't commit to this ceasefire. And that's why we, after 12 o'clock midnight last night or this morning, early morning, Russian airstrike and regime bomb shelling didn't stop.
But that is not what the Russian government says. The Defense Ministry said on Saturday that Russian warplanes will not carry out any airstrikes in Syria in order to support the cessation of hostilities and to avoid accidentally bombing the wrong targets. Chief of the Main Operations Directorate of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Sergei Rodskoy, said the Russian military had set up a ceasefire center in Khmeim Air Base, a move simulated by the United States, which set up a ceasefire center in the Jordanian capital Amman. Then both sides opened a hotline. Russia has also exchanged a newly drafted Syrian map with the US side, clearly showing ceasefire areas and areas controlled by government forces, armed groups and other military sources.
This week, we continued our mission to destroy ISIL.
Adding his voice to the mix, US President Barack Obama said everyone knows what needs to happen to make the ceasefire in Syria succeed, despite significant question marks over whether the agreement will hold.
There are plenty of reasons for skepticism, and even under the best of circumstances, the violence will not end right away. But everyone knows what needs to happen. All parties must end attacks, including aerial bombardment. Humanitarian aid must be allowed to reach areas under siege. And a lot of this is going to depend on whether the Syrian regime, Russia, and their allies live up to their commitments. The coming hours and days will be critical, and the world is watching.
The ceasefire was supposed to begin midnight of Friday, February the 26th. Mr. Obama, however, explains that the agreement to halt the fighting does not apply to the US-led fight against the Islamic State. That fight, he says, against the militants must continue.
There will be absolutely no ceasefire in our fight against ISIL. We will remain relentless. Beyond Syria and Iraq, we continue to use the full range of our tools to go after ISIL wherever it tries to take root, as we showed with our recent strike on an ISIL training camp in Libya. With partners around the world, we'll continue discrediting the ideology that ISIL uses to radicalize and recruit and inspire people to violence, especially online. Finally, we'll continue to stay vigilant here at home, including trying to identify lone actors or small groups of terrorists like those in San Bernardino, which are harder to detect. Our Homeland Security and law enforcement professionals are hard at work 24/7. At the same time, we'll keep working to build partnerships of trust and respect with communities to help them stay strong and resilient.
Now, coming up after the break.
I believe that not only can we win this democratic nominating process, but we can defeat Trump and defeat him soundly.
All is set for Super Tuesday in the United States. Please stay with us.